Katie, do you want to... You're an author, journalist, podcaster, and keynote speaker championing a circular approach to design. You're founder and director of Making Design Circular, a membership community and online learning platform. And your latest book, which I bought recently and can recommend, is Broken, Mending and Repair in a Throwaway World. You're now going to tell us a little bit and read something from that chapter.
I am indeed. Other things can be repaired. Objects, of course. Traditions can be. Hope can be. Emotions, eventually. But it requires cautious handling, patience, and care. Old hope can age beautifully. That is a quote from Otto van Busch that I open the introduction to my book with. And before I read you the introduction, I'd like you to partake in a collaborative act. The theme of the conference is obviously collaboration, and Ben Okri said that reading is a co-production between writer and reader. And I would argue that an event like this is also a collaboration between speaker and listener. So the title for the introduction is A Case for Paying Attention. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable to, or soften your gaze. Notice the feeling of your clothes against your skin and your bum in the seat. And join this act of co-creation with me for the next 10 or 15 minutes. I am writing this in the searing heat of July 2022. Temperatures in the UK have exceeded 40 degrees C for the first time in history. Railway lines are warping, runways are melting, and people across Europe are dying. I live in a county famous for its mizzle, a portmanteau of mist and drizzle, and I drove home past a wildfire this afternoon. In this moment, while I acknowledge the privilege that makes these new experiences for me, I understand more clearly than ever that our systems and structures are broken. The planet is heating up. It's time to move away from a linear take, make, waste economy, away from the 3 C's of capitalism, colonialism, and consumerism, and away from the idea of human supremacy over the natural world before it's too late. And yet our news cycles have been filled not with dire warnings and calls for change, but with abandoned net zero commitments, fossil fuel companies announcing off-the-chart profits, and puff pieces about people going to the beach to enjoy the good weather. Clearly the system is working just fine for some. The question of who gets to decide what is broken and what gets repaired or remade is at the heart of this book. Author, activist, and social justice facilitator Adrienne Marie Brown argues that our work is to notice what is broken, clear up the dangerous fragments of the past and let them go, or remake them into something beautiful and then begin again. But first, we have to notice what is broken. Despite the lack of coverage in mainstream news, most of us understand that we're living in the age of the Anthropocene and that human activity is now the dominant influence on the climate. We know that we've changed natural ecosystems that have existed on Earth for millennia in ways that can't be reversed. We've lost half the world's biodiversity in my lifetime alone, and global temperatures are close to spiraling out of control. And we know that the systems and structures that oppress and exploit the global majority are more than unjust. They're damaging to all but the global elite. We know full well what is broken. It's just that sometimes, often, we can't bear to look. It's too hurtful, too unfair, too frightening, and so we look away. Whichever side of the political divide we fall, we probably also know that it's not finished breaking yet. These systems of oppression will inevitably fall, says Brown. The structures that are not compatible with life on Earth will end. And US academic Stephen Jackson agrees. Many of the stories and orders of modernity, or whatever else we chose to call the past 200-odd years of Euro-centered human history, are in the process of coming apart, perhaps to be replaced by new and better stories and orders, but perhaps not, he says. And it's that perhaps not that's key, along with the question, better for whom? Because if we're really honest, we all know that more change is coming, and we're scared. That's why governments seem to be swinging wildly from far left to far right, why all companies are hoarding profits, and why the voices of naysayers, doomsters, and conspiracy theorists seem to be getting louder and louder and louder. If we want new and better stories and wild orders, ones that are better for all of us, not just a tiny minority, we can't look away any longer. We need to hold the stare with what is broken, with what can be repaired or remade, and with what needs to be cleaned up and let go. The act of noticing, of paying attention and asking questions, enables us to hold space for two radically different realities. Realities that Jackson describes as a fractal world, a centrifugal world, an almost always falling apart world on the one hand, and a world in a constant process of fixing and reinvention, reconfiguration and reassembling into new combinations and new possibilities on the other. He describes our broken world as a world of pain and possibility, creativity and destruction, innovation and the worst excesses of leftover habit and power, and suggests that at the fulcrum of these two worlds is repair. Those subtle acts of care by which order and meaning in complex socio-technical systems are maintained and transformed. Human value is preserved and extended, and the complicated work of fitting to the varied circumstances of organizations, systems, and lives is accomplished. Broken world thinking asserts that breakdown, disillusion, and change, rather than innovation, development, or design as conventionally thought about, are what we need to focus our attention on. Or as Mr. Rogers' mum put it, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. This is a book then not about designers, innovators, and makers, but about menders, repairers, fixers, hackers, and remakers, about those helpers, the people who can look damage and decay in the eye and construct new orders, new and better stories. In a throwaway society in which most people choose to look away, to replace rather than repair, this book explores the social and cultural roles that mending plays. And of course, the restoration of function is one of them, but the objects featured are rarely mended for solely pragmatic reasons. There's usually something in the original damaged piece that would be lost if it was simply replaced, not to mention the heritage craft skills involved in its restoration. There are a lot of people who love the materials and the processes, says Chris Miller, one of the people profiled. I like to think that what we do honors and respects that. Whether it's harking back to a simpler way of life or a desire for things made with a quality that's difficult to find in contemporary products, restoration offers more value than replacement. It's just that value is not always measured in financial terms. In repair as storytelling, we look at repair as a way to retain, retell, and reimagine the stories embedded within objects. In her book, Craft of Use, Kate Fletcher critiques images of fashion garments that are unworn, uncrumpled, capturing the idealized moment before a person slips on a piece, before time and life enters the sleeves, marks the collar, and creases the fabric at the hip of the trouser leg. And it's these crumples, these marks and creases, the craft of use, that the artists, menders, and remakers who tell stories through the repair are interested in. The time and life those objects have already experienced, and the time and life yet to come. As Celia Pym says, I'm often more interested in the damage than the repair. Understanding the story behind an object changes its value, makes you appreciate it differently. And although any form of mending or repair could be seen as a form of activism in today's single-use culture, many of today's artists, menders, and remakers are choosing to make a statement with their work. A broken object delivers frustration because it doesn't achieve its functionality, says Paulo Goldstein, but the same principle applies to a broken system. The people profiled in repair as activism are deliberately using repair to point a finger at what is broken at the systemic, structural, and cultural levels of society, asking us to notice, to pay attention. And while some are working to raise awareness of the impact of our broken systems, others are quietly working to repair or remake them. The curators and remakers in Repair as Healing are all finding ways to heal personal injuries, to reconnect people, and to rebuild communities through mending and repair. I approach repair as an act of healing, says Ekta Kaul. To stitch is to mend feelings of loss, to process emotions, to hold on to memories, and to create new connections with what I hold precious. Finally, in regeneration as repair, we come to regeneration because, as Sebastian Koch says, it is essential that we not only try to stay sustainable, but that we actively try to repair what has been lost. It's no longer enough to simply repair the things we have already taken from the earth. We also need to mend the systems we broke in the act of taking them. The people profiled in Chapter 5 are already doing exactly this. And so, despite the context within which I write, despite the systems and structures which are, to my mind at least, so utterly broken, I am not. I have not given up all hope. I am not yet despairing. I work hard every day to maintain what Christiana Figueres and Tom Rivett-Carnac call stubborn optimism, one of the 3 mindsets they recommend in their book, The Future We Choose, for combating climate change. Stubborn optimism is not blind faith or naive hope. It's the result of doing the work of holding space for all that is broken, all that might be repaired or remade, and all that needs to be cleaned up and let go. I find hope in the work of those who mend, despite all the reasons not to. The parents, grandparents, and caregivers who patch knees worn through children's trousers. The shed dwellers, allotment keepers, and garage owners who can always find something that might do. And the 28 people profiled in this book. I hope they help you to find your way back to stubborn optimism too, to hold space for both the pain and the possibility, to reconnect with old hope and find that it has aged beautifully. Thank you.